And I'm the are you using titles or no?
Subtitles? Or is that what you mean?
Are you referencing titles like Ryan does this or
Oh no. I mean, you can. I'll probably, in the bio part of, you
okay.
explaining what you do, but no. So I clarified it with Ryan before I hit record here, but you're really boots on the ground right now. So can you explain, we'll kind of use this as a lead in to the Inspiring Children Foundation and what you do, but setting up for the interview, you're not in your normal place, and that's because you're on the ground, you're doing work. So can you kind of give a little bit of background as to where you're at right now and what you're doing?
I'm at the Malibu Fig Ranch on Pacific Coast Highway in California. It's California's oldest organic farm. And about 6 times a year, we do a leadership retreat with the youth in our program. And during COVID, we found this farm that we partner with, and we did it there because it was outside. But it was so successful that we're doing it again this year.
And what, like I said, we will backtrack, but what are you doing? Youth leadership, Aspiring Children Foundation. How long is it? What you're doing right there, and what are some of the things you're doing, teaching, going through together?
So the Inspiring Children Foundation's goal was to kind of revolutionize the way we educate young people and give them everything I wish I was given when I was young. Not only the math and the science, but how do you deal with the psychological elements and the how do you build yourself emotionally, mentally, physically, with real life knowledge that you deal with every day. Um, and part of that is we do leadership retreats. Just like when I used to restructure companies for a living, we would stop, go off and do a retreat or do a conference to reevaluate who we are, who we want to become. And I thought, well, why won't you do that with a human life? So 6 times a year, roughly, we stop and take the children to a lot of times big nature, because big nature has a way of calming the mind and help them reflect on how they're doing and what they want to change and what they want to heal and how to move forward.
Before we dive into that, the work you do with the students, um, you mentioned restructuring companies, and I when we first met a couple months ago, and I probably will mention this on the intro, but I had read Jewel's book. I searched Jewel. I searched her on Instagram, and I found a link to the foundation. I reached out, and that's what eventually led to this conversation. And with a previous interview I did with Cherrial Odell, who is one of the students and a now intern, I believe, working with the foundation. So, I did a little bit of research on you back then, but could you fill us all in more? You mentioned your youth, you mentioned the things that you wish you had growing up. Can you kind of start us back at square one of Ryan as a kid growing up, getting into the corporate world, and then leaving the corporate world and doing what you do now? Because it's quite a transition.
Well, I grew up in a pretty affluent area, and I was lucky enough to have a normal family. But my father did fairly well, and I lived in an environment around extreme wealth. And so young Ryan was a sensitive human being that really felt a lot of things, felt for others, felt for myself, felt for my parents, wanted to see people happy. When I didn't see that, it made me very sad. Um, and then that sadness turned to probably anger and frustration. And then that anger turned to a facade of just trying to survive as a teenager. And I guess what we do as teenagers is just try to be cool, try to get the girls, try to have the parties. Definitely had a lot of great parties, was considered one of the best throwers of parties where I grew up, and had a lot of fun in the fake sense of the term, like
Yeah.
a lot of fake highs. And and then was very ambitious too. Like I wanted to be the best that I could be. And in my world, that meant being very financially successful. So, but after trying all these different highs, the high of making money, the high of getting power, the high of having a beautiful girlfriend or the great parties, none of them really seemed to be the full picture. So luckily, when my mentor had me come out to Vegas to restructure a company, um, I did very well with the business side, with work. And at that point, it was like I've got everything. I got the nicest car. I got an unbelievable place that I live. I got an unbelievable job. I think I was president of a company at 26 years old that I helped co-found, and it wasn't enough. I could tell there was a huge void in me, And then when I looked around me at the heroes of our day, I didn't always see happiness. I might have seen, like they're balling, but they didn't seem to be content. And luckily I stumbled upon yoga. I think I started doing yoga just to get chicks. Like if I do yoga, I'm cool and I'm deep, I'm a deep guy. And then I meet these hot girls. But luckily the yoga healed my superficial approach. And I started to fall in love with the idea of being able to calm my mind, being able to think more clearly, to get high naturally, basically, because I love to get high. But all the ways I was getting high weren't working. And whereas yoga and meditation and making better decisions were making me feel high in a way that was sustainable and not with that big like crash that I was used to getting in my teenage life.
And how long was that transition? Like how you mentioned being a president of the company at 26, finding yoga. What was the timeline there?
Well, I mean, I think in high school, the goal was to just be the coolest guy ever. I went to 23 proms, had like, 200 parties that were just epic.
You
And that
you
was a
grew up
high.
in California? You grew up
Pennsylvania, in
oh, where were you?
called the
Oh,
main
wait.
line.
I think we did. I did forget that.
Yeah, so
Um,
like the main line is called.
yeah. And
Where are you from?
I'm from PA. I'm central western PA, Hollidaysburg, Altoona area.
Yeah, so into Malvern Prep, and
Oh yeah, okay. Which is like Philly or Lancaster area, correct?
it's the suburbs of Philadelphia.
Yeah. All right. We did have this conversation. It slipped my mind. But the lifestyle you're describing reminds me of a California lifestyle. The high running, keeping up with the Joneses, affluence, chasing that next thing. So if you were, and we fast track college, which we may go back to, but if you were 26 running a company, when
Well,
did
yeah, let
you?
me. So at 18, I realized that the game isn't about how many proms you go to and how many parties you throw. And I found it's like where you go to college and how successful are you. So then I switched fast and I tripled down on, I don't think I went to one college party. I had a business in college, making, yearbooks and videos on other people going to parties and making money doing it and putting myself through college. And luckily my father lost everything. So it gave me a slap in the face to say, who are you and what are you going to do? And I thought, all right, well, the solution to life is I'm just going to work really hard and I'm going to achieve a lot. And I did that from like the age of 18 to 26. I worked 6 days a week. I basically gave up the idea of going to parties. Just from an ambition standpoint, I felt if I'm drinking on a Friday and Saturday and my competition isn't, I'm behind. And if I'm not, I'm ahead. So I just said, I'm not drinking anymore. I'm not smoking weed. And I basically cut it out of my life. And in 8 years, I worked my ass off and I got to pretty, fairly successful roles, in where I was in that realm.
Yeah.
But that realm, I also met a lot of people that are highly successful. And I started to have another awakening, like, wait, this was a scam. The high school was a scam. Getting hot chicks and parties does not make you happy. And then all of a sudden I'm in the scam of like, if you make a ton of money and you're powerful, well, I had that, didn't make me happy. So then I'm like, well, what is it that actually works?
Yeah.
And that's when I just said, I'm going to stop and I'm going to find out what happiness is and how to get there.
So there's two questions I have that are kind of, I know when I'm asked similar questions, it's not a simple answer, but I just want to hear your take on it. So the first one is that drive and ambition that you had, right? To get the girls, have the parties, and then switching that to making money. What is that? Where does it come from? Were you born with it? Was it the way you were raised? Where does that come from?
I think our foundation is proven that nurtures everything. How you're born, I don't think much of it. We take children that come from some very difficult circumstances, some not as much, and get them to the highest levels of life. And so I don't think it's how you're born. I think that drive that I had was built in insecurity. I think I was deeply insecure because I didn't have real happiness and real contentment. So I felt empty and then I needed to prove myself. So I overcompensated in a lot of areas and thinking, okay, if I can achieve this, then I'll be happier, then I'll be confident. People will like me, etc. I think you'll find that with a lot of people overly successful, they're really just trying to fill a void.
Yeah. And then the second part of that is awareness. So you had like these self kind of revelations or these transformation transition points in your life. Nobody said it to you, right? It's kind of like an addict, which I'm sure you've worked with all kinds of people throughout your career, both in the corporate world, both in what you do now. Some people get to a point where they say, boom, I'm done. I'm not going to do this. Some kids are raised by terrible parents who become great parents. Some are raised by terrible parents who replicate that process. It's like an awareness that some people have and some people don't. For you to have that awareness of, okay, girls, parties don't make me happy, switch, business, done with all that stuff. Money, power, doesn't make me happy, stop, move in this direction. Where does that awareness come from? Was it just you are the unique person to be in your position because you have those traits inherently, or were there outside factors and influences that contributed to that?
I mean, this is theory, but I would argue everybody has that awareness. Everybody has a higher knowing or an inner knowing, wise self. And I think the universe or life will send you people to wake you up, and they'll send people to put you to sleep, and you get to choose. I think everybody's a wise advocate. Like, no one person is better or more intelligent. Oh my gosh, they're so amazing. No, it's a choice. And for me, I just had made a lot of poor choices that didn't work. So I'm like, I'm going to find a better choice that does work. I mean, could I say that I fall into what I call the sensitive ones? The people that are built to be more sensitive, to be more aware of self and others, more empathetic, more connected. That those people sometimes can feel emotionally overwhelmed because they pick up on life. If something's happening and the person next to them feels it at a 5, I feel it at a 10.
Yeah.
And the way to deal with that as a young man was just to stay busy or to numb it, because it might have been too overwhelming at times. And then as I got older, I realized that's a superpower. So I would definitely say I'm definitely among the sensitive ones, and we tend to attract those people, because those people tend to notice things that other people don't notice. They tend to feel things other people don't feel. And I think everybody feels it, but they're so sensitive they can't turn it off. And a lot of times people think it's a curse. A lot of addicts will be in that category, but really it's a gift.
I think it's interesting as you're talking, I'm thinking, listen to what you're saying. And it's interesting. This is just a statement. It's not a question or a segue necessarily, but there are traits about you that led you to your position. There are traits about me that led me to my position, whether it's, insecurities or my fear of, literally fear of getting beat up. Like, I just have a fear of getting beat up. It's what drives me today in the gym. It's just part of me. And it's led me to where I'm at right now. So it's interesting to hear you talk
Are you
about.
still fighting?
No, I don't fight anymore, but I
Okay.
train
But
as
still
if I'm
have a
fighting.
fear,
Yes.
still have a fear of getting beat up.
Yeah, because I have a wife and 2 kids, and I don't want to ever be in a situation where I can't physically defend myself to protect my family. And so I know what it feels like, and that's why I focus on speaking to kids, because I remember when that was born in middle school and being scared out of my mind, even being a wrestler, knowing I have the skills to defend myself, but I don't have the mindset to defend myself, and I don't like this, and I'm scared out of my mind. So that eventually led to what I am now. And it's interesting to listen to you talk about the ambition and drive, the false beliefs in happiness, your sensitivity and emotional IQ or awareness, and how it's led you to where you're at right now. It almost makes sense. That's kind of my point. It makes sense that you're where you are.
Were you, was there a lot of situations where people were threatening to beat you up?
Yeah.
And you felt like you were in defense mode all the time?
Yep. Yeah. I'd walk down the hall and take my watch off because I thought I was going to get beat up. And this was at the same time that I was successful on the mat and in the classroom. So it was a real weird mix that was going on. But
were you beaten up? Did somebody beat you up at a few points that was traumatic and you're like, oh,
not necessarily. I was in this is a weird story. Like I almost feel like the energy, the frequencies, energies you give off, that's what you attract. I almost feel like I was so afraid of it that I attracted it. Almost like a shark smells fear, right? I remember I was at a football game in middle school. I'm guessing 8th, 9th grade. A couple punks from the neighboring school who they liked the girls at our school and they were a different school, etc. Kids walked up, started talking smack, punched me in the face, and I didn't do a thing. I sat there, and I'm not saying the right answer would have been to fight back. I mean, we were in bleachers at a football game, but that, and then I got in a fight. Wouldn't necessarily say I was like beat up or whatever. It was a fight. I left with a giant shiner, and it left a big mark on me as a person. And I just don't like feeling afraid. And so it is fear that drives me, for better, for worse. I've come to peace with it, but I just don't want that feeling anymore.
There's a positive fear. I mean, looking back, there's no doubt I had a positive fear. I didn't want to be a failure. I didn't want to look back and be like, oh my gosh, I got divorced. And oh my gosh, I failed as a father. Oh my gosh, I failed in my business. I failed as a human, even superficially. I failed among my friends, my peer group. So there's no doubt that drove me. And once I found out that my party life and my being Joe Cool in high school didn't really matter for shit, when I graduate high school, I was like, oh, geez, I got to switch and focus on what will make me successful. And, superficially, I was afraid of failing, and that fear helped me. I think there is a positive fear where that motivated me to want to be better and to be my best. And that drove me to do yoga and to do meditation and to even to learn how to work hard. I was probably very lazy at one point in my life. And that fear ended up helping me until eventually I could stop being motivated by fear. And I could be motivated simply by, like, the more I listen to my inner guide, my inner knowing, the better I feel.
Yeah.
I mean, here we are, we have this unbelievable intelligence within us that's not intellectual. That's much larger than our intellect. And it's an inner knowing. And if we follow it, what we know is right, we feel right. It's that simple. So the more I started learning that and experiencing that, I stopped being motivated by fear and started being motivated by the joy and the contentment that I get from doing the right thing.
It's kind of like an analogy that I'm thinking as you're talking, and maybe if the listener is confused at all to understand this, it would be akin to, okay, I'm going to start eating well because I know it's good for me. And then after 3, 4, 5, 6 months of eating well, it's, oh, I'm going to eat well because I like how I feel when I eat well. It's right. Like you buy into the thing. You have an aspiration and an outcome, and then you achieve that outcome, and you do it for the sake of
the purest sake. I started to eat well to look better, to get more girls, period. That's it. That's why I worked out. That's why I did yoga, period. And yet the very act of it purified my intentions. So I would just do it because it was just the right thing to do.
Yeah. And
I'm doing yoga today, and I don't care whether a girl likes it or doesn't like it. I mean, I eat healthy, whether she likes it or doesn't like it, right? Yeah. I do it because it's right.
Yeah. And to me, I don't know what my end story is going to be, but I still train hard because I don't want to be afraid. I like the feeling that it gives. So it's almost like I'm in a transition point of, I don't want to be afraid. I love the way it makes me feel. It's almost like maybe I'm in the middle point of forgetting about the fear and just liking how it makes me feel. A lot of guys, girls, whomever, post professional career, they stop. And to me, I'm never going to stop because it's the thing that I didn't just do it to perform. It's a thing that's part of me.
Well, working out gets you high.
Yeah.
I mean, I ultimately, I think we're built to get high. We're meant to be high. That's why people gravitate towards weed and towards alcohol and towards pleasure, because we're innately meant to be high. And if you meet a little 5 or 6 year old, they're high as a kite. But they're high as a kite because they're in their natural state. They're in the present. And, they don't know how to maintain that perfectly yet. And teenage life comes and swipes you away. But I think the goal is to recover that high in a way that's sustainable. And working out is one of them. Now, just working out won't work.
Yeah.
That's all you're doing, doesn't work. But a holistic approach of seeking your best and letting that guide you. And sometimes I love working out so much, but sometimes my knowing's like yesterday. It's like, your body can't work out today. It needs a rest day. I would like to go anyway, just to get the adrenaline. But the real high is as we follow what we know is right, it guides us to eat well, to work out, to do yoga, to have a conversation, to do whatever.
Yeah.
And the more we follow it. And so I don't know. I mean, I love to work out.
I certainly do too. And
how old are you?
I'm 40.
Yeah. In 40s, dude. Just low weights, high reps, because I'm telling you, the back and the body just says, you got to do this differently.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm aware of it, and I do it. I do it hardcore. but I do it differently than I used to do it. And to touch
I
on
want
what
to
you,
work out when I'm 90.
I know I
I want to
agree.
work out when I'm 80. So I keep that in mind.
And there
This
are
old guy
people,
walked by me the other day, and this was like 10 years ago, and I'm doing yoga after I worked out. He's like, take care of your body while you can. And I was already in that mindset. So I just opened my eyes and go, I know.
yeah,
I'm already thinking like I'm 70. Like, so if I want to run 5 miles, I run 2.5 because I know my hips are going to grind down, my knees are going to grind down, and I'm not going to be able to do it at 70. Right. So it's like keeping that awareness of keeping my parts alive.
two things real quick about the kids. You said that they're in a, I don't know if you said pure state or their natural state. You know, I have a 7 and 4 year old, and more so my 4 year old in the current, like meaning this week, this month, on it, right? Balls to the wall, morning, all the way, and I'll look at him with, you know, like a healthy, not envy, but a jealousy, but like a healthy, like that's what I want, and it is because he's in a pure state. He's not worrying. It's that mental energy that he doesn't waste that fills him. And I think about myself, yourself, the other self, like all that drain on worrying about this, that, the other thing, it just takes away from you. Politics, the president, the this, the that, the blah. It's like, it just drains you. And that kid.
Level 1 tomorrow. He's not thinking about tomorrow or yesterday. You're like, what are you gonna do tomorrow? He's like, what? You're like, how was today?
Yeah.
He's like, good, I guess. Like they're just not, but we train them to be in the past and the present.
Drives
it's like
crazy.
Diabolical. So, you know, it's like, well, I wanted to create a youth development program, a school, an environment that actually steps out of the way and lets them just learn and love learning and grow in a healing, profound way, physically, emotionally, mentally, organically, without interfering.
Yeah.
And giving them the wisdom when they need it, but not like, here, okay, everybody get in your head right now. You got to worry what you're going to do tomorrow. Have your schedule. You know, you're training somebody to get into an unhealthy state of mind.
So I have a question that it's not a pushback, but it's an inquiry because you're experienced with this. So you can't, this is my opinion, you can agree, disagree, etc. You can't have total structurelessness because the world is not structureless, right? There's structure, there's order, there's responsibility, there's etc. So how do you balance that? What I would think, what I do think is the need for stability, structure, let's say guidance, maybe not mandate, but guidance. How do you balance that with the approach that you just mentioned where you don't want to get in the way? But again, my thought, you do need some guidance. It's a parent to a child. You can't just let them run free. How do you balance that?
There is a guidance within us that is real time. Ingenuity, intuition, whatever you want to call it. It's real time. And like, for example, we're doing a retreat. We've got 35 people here. We've got 6 days. We had some guidelines. We had trailers delivered. We have dates, pick up and drop off, and that's it. We just stop. And then in that moment, we're like, all right, what are we going to do? And we let them run the retreat. We let them build the whole thing out. We let them decide what they're going to do. And they don't need to decide in advance. It's like, what are we going to do right now? What do we need to do for this retreat to work? We need food. Okay. Who's on the food team? They go do it. We need this. We need tents. Okay. You're on the tent team. We need this. Okay. Then they go do it. And then the rest is not scheduled. It's totally an unscheduled retreat. Not one thing is scheduled. If you said, what are we doing tomorrow? Everyone will be like, I don't know, like we're not there. Now, I guess it's scheduled that we're going to leave on a certain day, although we don't know if we're leaving Saturday or Sunday. That hasn't been decided. So as far as you can take it, we take it. And this isn't theory. This isn't pontificating like, I wonder what the world, this is 20 years of doing this in our foundation. Mm-hmm. And it's really 30 years of me doing it in my life. So it's how can you live intuitively and organically in a way that gives most of yourself to the present moment, where you're listening to your inner guide as it guides you. Now, you might say, well, unless you plan everything, it can't be done right. Well, I've found the opposite. When you are in the moment, it comes together more beautifully than any plan you could ever imagine. Now, I'll give you an example. I work with Jules. She's got a whole tour schedule. We've got a wellness festival with Kroger. 50,000 people show up. Obviously, we have schedules, right? But to the extent that something cannot be scheduled, we don't schedule it.
Yeah.
to the extent that something can be organic. And then we always say, in the end, our inner knowing or that moment trumps our plan. Let it flow, let it happen. And again, not theory. It's just something. I mean, I've lived my whole life like that.
I think for me, my understanding, my biggest takeaway from that is what you said. These are my words, but to summarize what you said, you don't schedule so much so that it allows. It's not like total nothingness, structurelessness. It's not allowing that structure and order to creep so far that you become not in the present and only mandated by that structure and order.
Yeah, I mean, people want to control life, like they can control it, but like, the old saying, if you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans. Like, you can try to control nature, you can try to control the weather and the waves and everything else, but nature's going to win. So instead of fighting, trying to control everything, you just say, all right, I'm going to let go and I'm going to go with the flow, and then and listen to my inner knowing and my gut in real time and roll. And the question is, are you going to be more successful with 100% of your focus on the present, reacting to what's happening right now, or 60% or 80% on the present and 20% in the future and the past?
Yeah, and I think that's a blatantly obvious answer. So
Yeah, so I have a collection of thousands of trillions of moments of being fully present.
Yeah.
Sometimes in the present, I book a plane flight for next week, but I'm just not as much as possible. I'm not going to be overly in the future or the past with how I live my life.
And is that so your motivation, purpose, mission with your foundation, is what you're talking about scalable? Is it because, so for example, I'm in my house, the influence I have, interaction with my wife, my kids, etc. It's very strong. And then if we go to the store, it's a little bit less. And then if we go to the work, like it gets diluted. And like, I was at a big hospital recently, and there's 1,000 different teams in the hospital. Communication breaks down. The purpose and the point of a simple task gets lost, right? Communication, I say this to you, you say something different to that person, gets lost. Is what you're talking about, is your goal, mission to make it scalable, or is that not even a thought?
Well, scale was kind of an enemy word for me, because scale to me, and in its unpure form, is volume, not quality. And it seems to be the buzzword these days. And I want to do something to be the best in the world at what I'm doing. I don't want to be the biggest in the world. I want to be the best. And I think people have to make a decision. I think a lot of charities, a lot of organizations are looking at scale before they're even ready to scale. And as a result, their quality is horrible. So I don't see Oxford scaling. I don't see Harvard scaling. I don't see Stanford scaling. There's one and they're the best. So I've always looked at it like that. Now, accidentally, organically, in the last 7 or 8 years, we have scaled. We've scaled. I mean, with Jewel has such a big reach through a wellness festival. We've taken our curriculum that Jewel helped build from her own life, and I helped build in my own life, and we put that into a wellness festival. And then we put it into a corporate curriculum. And then we put it into a school, a K-6 curriculum. So, it's scaling on its own. Or Cherrial, who you met, created an online mental health community, taking parts of what we do, and it scaled to millions of people. That was organic. And I have no problem with that kind of scale, because it's not at the cost of quality.
Yeah.
But most charities are scaling right out of the gate. And a lot of their ideas are pontificate, intellectualized concepts that have been proven. And then they scale it so fast and it doesn't have a huge impact. In our program, you walk in, I don't care if you walk in the basement or the 5th floor, you're going to the penthouse. You walk in, you're going to get a scholarship to college. You walk in, you're going to have the opportunity to go to the best schools in the world. And more importantly, you're going to have a psychology for life that will help you be able to find peace of mind no matter what circumstance you find yourself in.
And your success rate, I mean, on your website, I don't know, it's like incredibly high, not 100, but just about 100, and some probably are 100. So your success rate with the success through the program and after the program is pretty incredible. That, I don't know if that just simply proves what you're saying right now, because that is the outcome, that is the result of it. And I guess the question I was intending to ask is, how does that happen? But you've been kind of explaining that. But what are some of the actual nuts and bolts, whether it's a class, whether it's a access or resource that the kids have? What are some of those things that are built into your program, into the foundation?
Well, one, I mean, the the actual program was built organically the same way I'm living my life, the same way we show them that they can live their life. It wasn't planned. It just happened. And it met a need. One child, we helped the first child in the program was, a big personality, a lot like me when he was young, but heading in the wrong direction. And he needed help to get help with his athletics. He didn't have the money. So then we supported a tennis program with the Bryan brothers. We're the number one team in the world in history, actually. And that became a really high performance tennis program. And then he needed to get good grades to get a scholarship because he got the tennis. So we had the tutoring and the education program. And then he needed to deal with these, the things that were going on at home, like, pain with his life, trauma, financial hardship. So then we did the psychology for life. And then as it evolved over time, other kids came and they had other issues, some more deeper emotional issues. So we added emotional intelligence. Then we had some traumas. We added the trauma, work informed programming, mental health programming. And then it was like kids started to fall in love with the idea of starting their own business. We started added entrepreneurism. Other kids started to find their passion. Oh, I love video production. We have video production. Oh, I like art. We had art. Oh, I like events. Okay, you'll be part of our event team. So in our program, it's project-driven learning became huge. So you don't learn by just reading a book. You learn by creating a business plan for your life, so to speak, with your ideas, things that interest you, and you create projects around them. So for example, you, your wife, your children, like they're interested in something. So they can just say, all right, what are you interested in? All right. And then you as an adult have the awareness to then give them a project around what they're interested in.
Yeah.
If your daughter likes painting, okay, she's in charge of painting the garage. If your son likes, to build certain things, okay, you're going to help me build this desk. And then they learn through real life project driven learning.
Yeah.
And it's profound because then they love learning. They can't wait to do it versus us telling them what they need to learn. Does that make sense?
100% makes sense. And I talked to Cherrial
By the
about
way,
this.
all of that intertwines. So like they're in the middle of doing a project and they get anxiety because they're like, I don't think I can get this done, or I'm getting frustrated because they can't figure it out. Well, now you can hit the pause button and have a conversation about how to understand those emotions and how to heal that frustration. Or they might have a problem at home or whatever. So it's all interwoven. The emotional and mental and physical health is all interwoven into an intellectual project-driven learning growth environment.
Yeah. And I had talked to Cherrial about it and she explained it to me, but it was a little while ago and I don't know all the details of it. But your foundation, you mentioned the online stuff that Cherrial has created, and is it a brick and mortar school building? You said the first floor, the fifth floor. Is that kind of symbolically speaking? Is it a brick and mortar facility?
So yes, in part. So we have an office, we have facilities, we have inner city parks, we're in inner city schools, and we have feeder programs. So a child can come for 1 day a week, can come for 2 days a week. But something that's different is in our program, everything's earned. Because we found organically and by accident that if you just give it to them, there's no value to it. And if they earn it, they really appreciate it. So, and our kids don't want to feel like they're getting handouts. They don't want to feel like they're a charity case. And we say, you're not. You're earning everything that you get. So if a child really shows a great attitude, a great effort, we don't care about the result. As long as they have a good attitude and effort, then they can do 2 days a week. Then they can do 3 days a week. Then they can do 4 days a week. And when they get into the leadership program, they come into our office every day, 6 days a week. And year round for years. We're getting a kid who starts at 9. Cherrial started with us at 11 and she's 20 now. She's still in our program. So that is a brick and mortar. And then we have a partnership with a local charter school. They do the traditional math, science, English, the standard state standards. And then they go into school there for 2 days a week. And then the other 4 days a week, they come into our office and we give them our curriculum.
Okay.
Our curriculum is the entrepreneur skills, the physical, emotional, mental health, the psychology for life, project-driven learning. And they learn all those skills. Now, when I first did it, I was like, oh shit, like what if this doesn't work? What if they go to college? They got a really basic online, like rudimentary online public school education. They're going to these big schools where they get just tackled because they're not ready. But my theory was, no, you learn more by doing than anything. And you learn more when you have an emotional health and a mental health where you can reverse engineer inspiration. So when you said, I have a certain awareness, anybody can have that. They just have to learn the psychology of how to find their inspiration. And once they do, they go like this. They shoot to the moon.
And so do you have a staff at the brick and mortar at your
Yeah.
headquarters?
I mean, again, organically, I'm a volunteer. I've been a volunteer from day one, and we were all volunteers for the first 10 years. And then it just got too big and too much. And then all of our staff are pretty much alumni. So the second student that ever came in our program, his name's Trent Alanak. He's our executive director. And he graduated. He went to Villanova Business School on a full ride scholarship for tennis and academics, did very well, had opportunities on Wall Street, and many opportunities since, making 8 times what he makes. But he wanted to give back. And he came back to give back. He came back to mentor his younger brother. And what started as a 1 year or 2 year commitment became 10 years. And he's been our executive director for 10 years now.
And are the people who are leading these projects, like are they, I'm trying to get a grasp of the actual, what it looks like over there doing a project. Are they teachers? Maybe not necessarily by official title, but there are people who are facilitating, who are structuring, who are teaching the kids and showing them this, that, and the other thing?
I would argue the most highly capable individuals are what I call lived experience experts. They've lived it. They've gone through it. Somebody that's been through depression, somebody that's been through trauma, somebody that's been through addiction, somebody that's been unmotivated, then became motivated, somebody who's been through our program, somebody who's been an athlete, who's better at teaching UFC fighting? The professor at UNLV that's studying it, or you?
Yeah. No
offense to the professor at UNLV. I love UNLV, but the real gritty doing it is a next level, right?
Yeah.
Now, if you have both, that's ideal. So our staff is all lived experience experts. One of them is getting a degree in psychology, so he can be a psychologist to basically teach, to be certified to teach what he already knows.
Yes.
Because he's already been through it.
Exactly.
Right. So if you look at, you mentioned addiction earlier, if you look at one of the most successful human development programs in the world history is AA. It's not perfect. I would change a couple of things, but it's pretty damn good. And it's saved and inspired who knows how many lives, and talk about scalable, and it runs itself. I mean, it's unbelievable on so many levels. And there's not nobody's got a certificate.
Yeah.
So I'm a big believer that, the people that would look for physical health 50 years ago, you would think an MD. Now, if you think of physical health, you think of somebody like you who's already figured it out.
Yeah.
You can be like, yeah, I already figured this out. Let me show you.
Yeah.
And no one would even think about going to an MD to get fit. It wouldn't even be, they would think the opposite. Right. I'm going to go down to a trainer who lives and breathes this. So our team really lives and breathes like a holistic health lifestyle. Physically, but we have 10 pillars of high performance living, we call it. And they live that brand.
It makes complete sense. I don't really have anything to add to that other than, yes, you're right. And I agree with that wholeheartedly, what you're saying. I just lost my train of thought. Oh, with the kids, the students' kids coming to, you mentioned 2 days a week, up to 6 days a week. Are they coming to your building or buildings instead of going to school, or is it after school?
So 4 days a week, they come to our building. 2 days a week, they go to the charter school. That's our partner.
Okay.
And in those 2 days a week, they get all their core curriculum.
Got it.
That the state requires.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And then they do their homework at night and during the day. And then those other 4 days, they're in our office. And the goal is to get that stuff done.
Yeah.
It's great. Don't get me wrong. The math, the science, it's all great. But we're going to get into, I hate to be arrogant, I call it real learning.
Yeah.
Where you're going to get in there and freaking do it. And then you're going to understand why you were reading that in a book.
Yeah.
You want to learn. I mean, look, I did my first Excel sheet and I was like, why am I even doing this class? Once you're in a job, you understand why you need Excel. So when they're doing the real life work, they really get a closer relationship to learning.
Boy, what a good mix. You just filled in a gap that I couldn't quite put together. I'm trying to, understand this and really comprehend it, but that seals the deal. And it is such a great compliment to learn it and then do it and then understand, oh, that's why I'm learning it so I can do it, but not having that be 5 years later, right? Like having
Correct.
it be kind of at the same time or the next day.
Correct. I mean, our whole foundation is run by the children. 80% of what we do, the children run. So our fundraising, children run those events. Our charity tennis tournament, they created the whole concept and they run it. Our office, they build it out, literally build the desks, set it up, decorate it, the whole bit. Our press releases, they write them, they edit them. Our website, probably you can tell it's they created it, right? But everything that we do, if they can do it, we have them do it. And I'm saying we're willing to give them projects that are way above their pay grade.
Yeah.
And they rise to the occasion.
Yeah. So I had mentioned at the beginning of this, what ultimately led me to you, to reaching out to the foundation page on Instagram.
Oh, wait, can you hear the rooster? Or no?
I can. It's funny. And I was going to make a joke and say it's real. It's not like a staged.
It is a real rooster.
Yeah. I was going to say that it's not a staged sound effect. It's a rooster. Yeah, I can hear it. What led me to you was Jules' book, Never Broken. And my partner, he said, it's a good book. You should read it. And I was, I know Jewel, and I was in my, formative middle school years when she shot to stardom. And I didn't know how much I'd resonate with, I'm not particularly into music. I didn't know, if I'd enjoy it. But man, the relevance of her personal story, her journey, how it connects with what you're doing is, it's awesome. It's incredible. It's a super great book. Also lends very well to what you're doing. So how did that connection happen? Like did you start Inspiring Children Foundation? And then when did that connection with Jewel and Never Broken come together?
So my twin brother is in the tech industry, but he was helping Hollywood to promote and market films. And he got to be really close with Mark Burnett, the producer. And he was at Mark's house and Jewel was there because she was on The Voice. And they got to talking, and the more he was speaking to her, the more he realized, he said, he's my twin brother. He's like, you're really my twin brother's twin brother or twin sister, because Jewel and I are very, very aligned in our life experiences and the things that we've discovered on the way in which we've healed our own anxiety and depression and trauma. And when I read it, my brother kept telling me, you got to meet Jewel, you got to meet Jewel. And to be honest with you, I'm just so passionate about my life. I really don't have any desire to work or do anything else. And he's always trying to, give me some business ideas. I'm like, I'm fine. But I read her autobiography. And after I read that, I was just blown away. And I just said, I definitely want to meet Jewel. So we do an event with Richard Branson called the Necker Cup. And she came with my brother and we met, and she met Cherrial. And they ended up talking for 2.5 hours about Cheryl's life story. And, immediately it was clear that she's, like very, very the female version of me in many ways. I just can't sing and I'm not good looking, but, she's far more articulate and poetic than I am. But the things she cares about and the work she cares about is identical. So we started collaborating. I was on her board for a while, and then I became president of her board. And when that happened, we kind of merged our programs because she had been doing it for 25 years over here, and I'm doing it for 20 years over here, and we just brought them together. And and that's the Inspiring Children Foundation. And the Jewel Never Broken program is pretty vast, but Jewel's pretty much, the head of our advisory board, and she's taken what we do to a whole nother level.
The word synergy is kind of like a cheesy word, but it very much makes sense. And like I said, I can't recommend her book enough. And it was just cool. It was cool to read the book. Obviously she's super famous. Think like, gosh, man, this is such a great book. And I want to connect with it more than just reading this book. finding the foundation, reaching out, having whomever handles it respond to me, being able to interview Cherrial, now being able to talk to you. It's just a cool like confluence of events about, again, something I'm extremely passionate about, like helping kids. And it's what I do. It's my livelihood. It's how I make my money. It's how I live. It's what I'm driven to do. So it's really cool to be able to hear how this all came together and how it kind of revealed itself rather than, a master plan that came to effect.
It was all into it. I mean, our whole core understanding, Jewel and myself, is that everything we let unfold intuitively. I mean, she's the one who wrote the song Intuition in like 1997. When I was learning to live by intuition, I literally took a year off of my life, and with the goal of just learning how to be led intuitively instead of from my intellect all the time. It wasn't natural to me because I had gotten so in my head. And I heard her hit song on the radio, and I was like, see, I'm not crazy.
Yeah.
There is such a thing as intuition. There is an inner guide. There is a conscience, whatever you want to call it. And so there's a pop song about it. And Phil Jackson was leading the Bulls to championships using meditation and these things. But back then, you're kind of a weirdo if you're talking about this kind of thing. But it gave me hope. So it's kind of amazing how 15 years later, I meet her, and the very basis of our collaboration is intuitive.
Yeah.
And everything we do is about following intuition. And she has a personal story and a connection to the children that's beyond words, because she's been where they are.
Mm-hmm.
And they know that she's not saying she's giving advice because she's already been through it, and she knows what it's like to be on the other side of it.
Yeah. That's what makes.
And you mentioned scale earlier. What we were doing in Vegas in our office, I knew was magic. It was magic in a box. And like you said, our results prove that. I mean, last year we got kids into Harvard, Columbia, Georgetown, Stanford, Brown, USC, Clark Atlanta, UNLV, USD, San Diego, and probably one other, because I forget, mm-hmm. right? And then another girl graduated med school. There's not a private school in the country that has that kind of graduation.
Yeah.
Now, I don't really give a shit about that, to be honest with you. I really don't. Because what I care is that they're professionals of life. That if they have anxiety, they know how to calm it. Mm. If they see what depression looks like in themselves or someone they know, they have the tools to heal it, to manage it. If they have trauma, they know how to deal with it. They have a community that can help them find peace of mind. Those are the tools you need. Well, if you have that foundation, that psychological foundation, you can do anything.
Yeah.
And they're proof of it. Cheryl's a great proof of that. And what Jewel did is she came in with her celebrity, with her love of this work, with her online tools, jewelneverbroken.com. And she merged it with, that was our first project together. Cheryl, me, Jewel, and a bunch of the children sat around for a month and worked on building that website together. And she basically helped us take what we do in that little office and take pieces of it and bring it out to the world. And then when she was done that, she did the Wellness Festival, take pieces of what we have and bring it out to the world. And then recently the community. So because of Jewel, scaling is possible.
It's really cool, man. I had one final direction I wanted to take it in that I got lost in what you're saying, to be honest. But in terms of moving forward, in terms of, I know you're living in the present, you said you're living in the present, but beyond your retreat, right? What's next for you guys?
Well, we're doing our strategic planning process, which is like where we look where we're at, we look what our strengths and weaknesses are and what we need to fix, right? It's not like there's no self-awareness if you're being present, right? I mean, you're aware of what needs to be worked on. And we are a gritty organization that, we $4 million budget, but we only bring in $2 million in cash, and the rest we go out and beg, borrow, and steal to donate. Our goal is to one day get to a point where our staff can get paid what they should be paid. Mm-hmm. That we have the infrastructure to scale in a better way. But we're continuing to be what we call an incubator for excellence. So we're creating programs and curriculum that really help young people to be physically, emotionally, and mentally healthy, and to love life. To love life so much that when they get up, they can't wait to go give it their best and to create more life. And that could be creating businesses. It could be creating more great relationships. You could be competing like a warrior in the realm of athletics. but like a holy warrior
Yep.
doing great things, not just winning that specific bout, match. And we want to continue doing that. I don't want to be in 100 cities where I can't continue the incubator and making better and better and better tools. And other organizations are coming to us and studying what we do.
Yeah.
And then they can take that back to their school district or to their foundation or to their family or to their company. And that's how it can, what Joel calls the dandelion effect. What we're doing in Vegas can spread out to other people with those seeds of inspiration and insight.
Yeah. Well, this has been awesome, man.
Maybe your daughter will paint the garage tomorrow. I don't know. We'll see.
Maybe she likes cookies, and I like cookies, so maybe she'll help me make some cookies.
She's 4, or she's how old?
She's 7. My son's 4.
You'll notice with each year that her brain will start to give her worries and fear and self-doubt and frustration, and
I can see, when you were talking earlier, I can see my son they're almost 5 and 8. I can see my son at 5 and my daughter at 8, that happening.
Correct.
And I took a note of it, and I'm going to do my damnedest to.
What are their interests?
This is what I thought you were going to say when you went in that direction. But just the other day, chokes me up. Just the other day, my daughter loves climbing things. Like we have a real. I live near Hershey, PA, and we have some pretty nice facilities for random stuff around here, and we have a really nice ninja gym at a complex called Paramount Sports. And she loves ninja. She loves climbing stuff. And the other day we were up in New England and she was climbing stuff. And she said, "Dad, can climbing rocks be a job?" I was like, "Yes. And I will help you make that your job 1,000,000 times over." And my son loves dinosaurs. And I'm like the opposite of pushing him. All he talks about is wrestling. So I was raised the right way to not be pushed, but to be encouraged. Yeah. Supported. And so I have that model to follow. And I'm telling you, when my daughter said, "Can climbing rocks be a job?" I thought, oh my gosh, Grace, yes, it absolutely can.
That's great. And the wrestling thing's great because I think mastery is where you pass down the best teacher is the person who did it. It's an apprenticeship. Look at the best artists in the Renaissance. It was all apprenticeship. So your son has a chance as long as you keep it about his growth and what he's led to do instead of your.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I became very aware early on of not saying, "I hope my son X. I hope my daughter X." Like I do, whether they wrestle or host a podcast or whatever it is. As you mentioned, Jewel, as you mentioned yourself, I've lived a life of trying my best, winning, losing, and getting back up again. So that's what I will teach them, regardless of where they go, what direction, because those skills, that's how you win. That's how you win at life.
It's huge. I totally agree with that. Attitude is everything.
All right, man. Well, as we close here, the listeners, a Simple Inspiring Children Foundation, you'll find it. Jewel Never Broken, you'll find this information. But are there any specific handles or website you want to give out, Ryan?
It's just inspiringchildren.net. The mental health and mindfulness tools are jewelneverbroken.com. And that's where, if you hit the community aspect, that takes you to Cherrial's online mental health community, which is twitch.tv/InspireHouse. But you can get there through.
Yeah. And listeners, I will include, well, I guess in the outro, I will include the Jewel the Never Broken segment I did on my show, as well as the number for Cherrial's interview on the show as well. So you can listen to that stuff. But man, I really appreciate it. I know you're a busy guy. You're on retreat, right? There's roosters outside. So it's, you got a lot going on, but I really appreciate you being here. And I love the story. I love what you're doing.
I appreciate it. Thanks for having me. But before